Alrighty, so the take two. My last ones I hit mute at some point, and so that was a problem. All right, so this is about internal boundaries. I'm going to try and make this a little bit quicker than the last one. So when we talk about internal boundaries, we're talking about within states themselves. If I state them in country in this regard, so obviously within the United States, the internal boundaries are state boundaries, county boundaries, district boundaries, that kind of stuff. And so these are the three terms that we're going to be getting for this one: districts, redistricting, and gerrymandering. I've got a couple others thrown in here. So let's take a look. Uh, just like international boundaries divide up the world, we have internal boundaries that divide up a state. And so if you look at the US, for example, we are broken up into states. Canada is broken up into provinces. And so, different countries do it different ways, but generally it's similar. Okay. And so these internal boundaries often have what we call voting districts. And we're going to run into this term redistricting and then gerrymandering. Alrighty. And some of those effects. So when you look at the U.S., and we'll talk mostly about the U.S. here because this is what we're familiar with, and so remember, things work generally the same across the world, with obvious differences, but uh, this will give you an idea. So in the U.S., we have two legislative bodies in Congress. We have the House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay, within the Senate there are 100 members, two per state, which means that there is equal representation. However, in the House of Representatives, and by the way, this group makes the law. All right, and we vote on them. And so in the U.S., we also have the House of Representatives, and there are 435 members in the House. And so that number stays constant, 435. And so when the population grows, the 435 stays, but each person just represents more people. And so what we want to do is try to figure out, how we determine which state gets a certain number of House of Representatives members. And so, like right now, Arizona has 9 members. That's probably going to go up to 10, and we'll see why in just a second. So, and here's how we figure this out. And so this is for this type of representation, House of Representatives, because remember, the U.S. doesn't matter how big or small your state is, you get 2 senators. So what we do in the U.S. is we have this a census, and this has to be taken every 10 years. And a census is just simply a count of the population. And so again, other countries, other states have censuses as well, but we do it every 10 years, and we look at where the population is, how much it's grown, and where the population has moved as well. And so by looking at that, we can start to figure out how many representatives each state should get. All right, and so we have this thing called reapportionment. Now, in the U.S., our Constitution says that every 10 years they have to count all the people in each state. All right, and so there was some question when Trump was president. He wanted to count just legal citizens or people who were here legally and not illegal immigrants. And so that became a bit of a court case. Never quite got settled before he left office, but he was probably going to not win this one because the Constitution specifically says all people. And so anyway, so let's take a look. Within the U.S., we have 435 members. All right, and so ideally, so we got 330 million people or so. We would just divide that by 435, and that would give us how many people each representative represented. And so in general, this number is somewhere in this area, 7 to 800,000 people. So of those 435 House members, each one represents somewhere around 750,000, right? There's a couple, if you look, the lowest here is in Rhode Island. That's just because that's their population, and each state has to have at least one representative. Montana has the highest at over 1 million, but they don't have enough to get a second representative, and so that's kind of the high end. So, but you can see generally 7 to 800,000, and so in the U.S. that would be our average. That's much bigger than other countries. So Germany 116, Spain 132, Turkey 146. So each representative for us is they represent a lot more people than in other countries. All right, and so here's how this works. All these numbers just tell us how many representatives, and this is going to be as of 2020 because these numbers are about to change because we just had a census. All right, and so Arizona is expected to have 10, Texas 39, California 52, And we'll talk about these different colors here in just a second. All right. Now, within each state has their own voting districts. And so per color, so let's say that this is voting district one and it's all this blue stuff. All right. So the voting districts here are by color. These red lines that you see here, these are the county lines. All right. So that's not relevant to the voting district. So we have one voting district there, one voting district here, one there, and then there's five here. And so, this one is very small, but again, this represents about 750,000 people. This represents about 750,000 people. So the more rural an area, the bigger the house the house district is going to be, and the more compact. And so if you look at like Phoenix or Atlanta or New York or LA, they're going to have a lot of congressional districts within that. All right, and again, it does depend on the scale here. Uh, the district would be that. The state is the whole thing, and obviously the country. All right, and so after the census is taken, uh, each state then redistricts. And so uh, we'll go over that in just a second. So one thing to note, generally speaking, state legislatures are the ones that redraw these lines. So if we come back here, after the census, these lines get redrawn if the number changes, okay? And so I'll show you more of that in just a second. Now, the state legislatures in the US, most of them do it. I think 42 of the states generally have the state legislatures redraw those lines, which can lead to some political problems. And the biggest one is called gerrymandering. Now, most European countries have nonpartisan commissions. And nonpartisan just means they don't favor one party or another. They're just independent and try and do what's right. Leave it at that. And so after the census, when they look at where the population is or has moved, they look and say, okay, does, like Arizona, we had 9. Does Arizona have more people moved into Arizona? And the answer here is yes. And so we'll probably pick up, we haven't got it yet, but the census just about to be completed. We'll probably pick up a seat. And that just means that people have moved in here, and here we have other states, California. We'll just say, because a lot of people from California moved into Arizona, and so they'll have lost one seat. All right. And so that would just be because the population shifted from there into there, or from, wherever. And so wherever you see these pink colors, they lost one House seat because of reapportionment. And again, reapportionment is the redistribution of those 435 seats. And so Arizona picked up 1. Take a look down here. Texas picked up 3. So a lot of people are moving to Texas, and a lot of people are leaving these states. So the pink people are leaving, the green people are showing up too. And so every 10 years, we see where people have moved, and then we take care of it from there. All right. Here's changes in congressional apportionment. So just over the last 70 years, 1930 to 2000. So the green means people are leaving, and the blue means people are showing up. All right. And so you can kind of see how over the last 70, 80, 90 years, people have generally been leaving this part and have been coming to this part. All right. We've talked about the Sun Belt. That's this. More people are moving down south. All right. So when we talk about redistricting, all this is saying, look, after the census has been done and the seats have been reapportioned, then states need to redraw their boundaries. And so this is South Carolina from 2001 to 2011, right? And so here's how their districts looked in 2001. And then they gained a seat, I believe. And so you can see here's District 2 here, and here's District 2 here. And so after the census in 2010, they had to redraw those lines. And so in South Carolina, it was the state legislature redrawing those lines. All righty. Here's one. Here's House District 1, I believe in Arizona. I think that's Arizona. And so this is District 1 and District 1, just from different years. All right. And so one of the problems we can get with redistricting is that the state legislatures will want to redraw their districts in favor of one political party or another. And so at the end of this PowerPoint, I actually have the definition, but we talk about gerrymandering. It is redrawing districts to favor one party over another. And so this guy's name is Elbridge Gerry. He was back in like 1815-ish. He's, part of the founders. And so we had 2 political parties. We had the Democratic Republicans, that was a party no longer around. We had the Federalists, that was a party no longer around. And so Elbridge Gerry was in Massachusetts, and he was a Democratic Republican, and he said, "Look, I want more Democratic Republicans to be to represent us in Congress." And so when they were redistricting, they started drawing districts with funny shapes. All right, and so the idea was, look, here's a lot of Democratic Republicans. Let's draw this district to make sure that the Democratic Republicans win. And so, based on this shape up here, that came about, and that was like the political cartoon saying, look, here's one district that's kind of wonky. You're doing that just for political benefit, and they were. Okay, and so that kind of stuff still happens today. Sometimes not as dramatic, but sometimes it is. If you look down here, this is around Philadelphia. This is one district. All right, this is what is it? Like a Disney district. Snoopy kicking Donald Duck, I think, is what the little humor of it is. But anyway, so we have gerrymandering. We have two different types. Uh, one is called packing, and one is called cracking. And we're going to take a look at those in just a second. So packing, making a district full of the opposition party voters. And so if you have, well, we'll look at it in just a second. And then cracking is splitting up a district, splitting up the opposition party and diluting their votes so they can't win any. All right, and then we also have drawing majority minority districts. And so minorities are the majority voters in a district. And so if you have, this group here, they're all the same, and you have this group here, they're all the same. Let's say we have a couple of the X's here. You might draw a district that says, hey, look, let's give them one, and then we'll take a few others. Okay. So that would be a majority minority district. But let's look at what these mean. So let's say that we have this 50 people here. And let's say that the blue, since blues are Democrats and reds are Republicans, this would be a representative sample. So we have 60% blue, 40% red. And so if we had perfect representation, then we would draw districts like this. Okay, we would say, look, here's your district. So Republicans, you get this district and you get this district. Therefore, they get two of the districts. And then Democrats, you get the other three. And so these would be district lines, right? This would be the entire state, the shape of the entire state. And these would be the district lines. And so, you have 60% blue, 40% red. If we have 3 blue seats and 2 red seats, that's equal representation, right? And so that would be kind of fair. But a couple things they can do. So we have compact but unfair. So if the Democrats were in charge, they could say, look, we're going to make this one voting district. And so when everybody votes, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versus 1, 2, 3, and 4. Who's going to win this district? That'd be the Democrats. And so they could draw the districts like this, and that would be advantageous to the Democrats, but not fair to the Republicans, right? And so they would win all 5 of these districts. And so that would be what we call cracking. We're going to take this group, and so this is cracking here. I'm going to take this group of Republicans and just split them all up and be part of the other districts, be part of these districts, and they would lose them all. Now, the other one is called packing. So let's say that the Republicans were in charge and they wanted to get as much as they could. So let's take a look at this district. And this is where you see some funny drawn districts. So let's take a look at this one, right? So here's one. So in this district, the Republicans would get 1 vote, and then the Democrats would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so Democrats will definitely win that, right? But if they draw it out here, so now this district, okay, this one here, so it's being drawn kind of funny. Republicans have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 versus 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so the Republicans would win that one. The Republicans would win that one, and the Republicans would win that one. So they would end up with 3 districts, and the Democrats would win that one. And so that's what we mean by packing. They would say, look, we know, where's my thing? So this district here, it's just going to be all Democrats. We know that, and we're just going to pack them all together. And so these 2 are all Democrats. And so we give them, and then we split up the other 3. And so in this scenario, the Republicans would pick up 3 seats versus Democrats 2. Here, Democrats pick up 5-0. And so you can see this has a pretty big impact on representation in Congress. All right. Here's a couple of other districts, how gerrymandering can swing uh, elections. And so take a look here. This is North Carolina, Republican congressional map used in 2012 and 2014. I think it ended up getting changed. These blue ones are Democrats. And so this is probably packing. Same here, same here. So we've got three districts, 1, 4, and I think this is probably 9 or 12. I'm sorry. That's District 12. So we end up with 3 Democratic districts and 10 Republican districts. Now, if you were to say, hey, let the Democrats draw the lines, they could have drawn it like this if they were in power. And they would have ended up with 9 seats and then Republicans with 4. That is a big difference between them. And so the power to draw these lines has a lot of influence over who gets overall power. Now, if we went with an independent commission, they could say, look, let's cut this, let's draw these lines so these are similar. And by the way, remember, if we have small districts, that means high population. And so we could draw these 5, so we could have 5 apiece, and then we could have 3 that were generally, 50-50, and they just kind of battle, Democrats and Republicans battle it out, right? So anyway, so that's the effects of gerrymandering. Here are some gerrymandered districts, just some funny looking districts. You can pause it and take a look at that. I do want to show you this. This is Austin, Texas. Austin's a very big Democratic city, and so in 2010, I believe it was, either 2000, might have been 2000, they came in and redistricted in Austin, and they cracked it, meaning they said, look, this is mostly Democrat in, okay, this is mostly Democrat. Austin's a very Democratic city. And so they said, look, here's one district. So these are all Republicans out here. Let's pull part of District 25 in and carve it up like that. And then let's take District 10 and bring it in here and carve a little bit more Austin there, District 21, District 25. You get the idea. And so they carved up Austin into like 4 or 5 to be part of 4 or 5 other districts that were majority Republicans. And so if you're a Democrat living in Austin, there are no Democratic representatives, right? So last little bit, gerrymandering. Here's the definition. The majority party in power of the state legislature redraws the districts to give some political advantage. Now, take a look though. Here's the bright spot. These states allow independent commissions to draw the lines. All right, so it looks like 8 of them. So there's Jersey, Michigan, and you can see all those. And so this is a good thing because it takes the partisanship out. And so Arizona is one of those. We should be happy about that. We just, again, allow independent commissions to do this instead of party politics. So anyway, that's it. Nope, that's not it. I do want you to take a look at this. This is from a scoring rubric for gerrymandering, the effects of it. It definitely keeps one party in power. All right, that is one of the biggest effects. It does lack the sense of community. If you end up with districts that look like this person in this community might be a lot different than this person in this community. And so you don't have necessarily a cohesive group, right? Individual candidates, it can be drawn to either, if a candidate is popular in certain areas, they can draw the district for that candidate, or if they want to get rid of a candidate that's popular, they can draw that person out of a district. And that's happened a lot. Advantage or disadvantages for a voting block. By voting block here we mean like groups of people with political power. And so create and preserve minority majority districts, that would be in effect. Lower voting participation if you've been gerrymandered out. So the Democrats in Austin, they may be like, look, why even bother? Because I'm not going to have as much of a say because I'm in this district with a whole bunch of people from the other side. Some judicial challenges may arise with the gerrymandering. People may say, look, that's just not fair. And then this idea of pre-clearance. Back in 1965, Congress passed something called the Voting Rights Act. And this was for southern states. And the southern states, when they were drawing districts, they would break up minority groups. And so they cracked them. And so the minority groups didn't have any representation. And so in the 1960s, the Voting Rights Act said, look, for each of the southern states, they had to get approval by the Department of Justice, the federal Department of Justice, to say that these voting districts are legal. Okay, they're not discriminatory. And so a few years ago, 5, 10 years ago, something like that, that law was overturned. And so now southern states can draw those districts wherever they like without having to get approval by the Department of Justice. And so that's what the pre-clearance is. Department of Justice for the federal government saying, hey, these districts are fine. All right. So I think that's it. Yeah, 2013 they ended the practice, and so these things are still ongoing. All right, but definitely make sure you are familiar with some of the effects of gerrymandering. Definitely get 3 or 4 down in your head. All right, I'm going to skip this video because it's an extra 5 minutes and basically says everything that I just did. All right, so y'all take care and hope the audio worked on this one. I don't want to have to do it again.